Wisdom and inner silence. The wings of compassion. If kindness is imagined as a beautiful dove, then wisdom is its wings. Compassion without wisdom never takes off. A Boy Scout performed his good deed for the day by guiding an old lady across a busy road. The trouble was she didn't want to go. She felt too embarrassed to tell him. That story, unfortunately, describes well much that goes by the name of compassion in our world. We assume too often that we know what the other person needs. A young man, born deaf, was visiting his doctor accompanied by his parents for a regular checkup. The doctor excitedly told the parents about a new medical procedure which he had just read about in a medical journal. In 10% of people born deaf, full hearing can be restored through a simple, inexpensive operation. He asked the parents if they wanted to give it a try. They quickly said yes. That young man was one of the 10% whose hearing was fully restored, and he was so angry and upset with both his parents and the doctor. He hadn't heard what they were discussing at his regular checkup. No one asked him if he wanted to hear. Now he complained that he had to endure the constant torment of noise which he could make little sense of. He never wanted to hear in the first place. The parents and the doctor, and myself before I read this story, assumed that everyone would want to hear. We knew best. Compassion that carries such assumptions is foolish and dangerous. It causes so much suffering in the world. Caring for a son. The trouble with parents is that they always think they know best what their child needs. Often they get it wrong. Sometimes they get it right, as did the Chinese poet Su Tung Po, 1036 to 1101 CE, almost 1,000 years ago when he wrote the following poem. On the birth of my son. Families, when a child is born, want it to be intelligent. I, through intelligence, having wrecked my whole life, only hope the baby will prove ignorant and stupid. Then he will crown a tranquil life by becoming a cabinet minister. What is wisdom? While still a student, I would spend most of my summer vacations walking and camping in the Highlands of Scotland. I delighted in the solitude, beauty and peace of the Scottish mountains. One memorable afternoon I was ambling by the ocean along a narrow road which wound along the headlands and inlets of the far north. The warm, bright sun was like a spotlight for the extraordinary beauty around me. The moorland was an endless sweep of velvety grass in the fresh green of springtime. The cliffs had been sculpted like cathedrals soaring high above the swirling sea. The ocean was the blue of late evening, as if scattered with fairy lights sparkling and twinkling in the sun rays, and small green and brown rock islands seemed to surf on the waves as far as the haze line of the horizon. Even the gulls and the terns were gliding and wheeling. In euphoria, I was certain. It was nature showing its finest in one of the most scenic parts of our world on a day of sunny glory. I was skipping along in spite of my heavy backpack. I was joyous without a care, high on the inspiration from nature. Ahead of me, I saw a small car parked by the roadside next to the cliff. Immediately, I imagined that its driver had also been overcome by the beauty of the day here and had stopped to drink its ambrosia. When I was close enough to the car to see through its back window, I was disappointed and dismayed. The single occupant of that vehicle, a middle-aged man, was reading a newspaper. The newspaper was so big it blocked the whole view of the world around him. Instead of seeing ocean and cliff and island and grassland, all he could see was war and politics and scandals and sport. That newspaper was wide yet very thin. Only a few millimetres on the other side of that black dreary newsprint lay the pure rainbow-coloured elation of nature. I thought to take out a pair of scissors from my pack and cut a small hole in his newspaper so he could see what was on the other side of the article on the economy he was reading. But he was a big, hairy Scotsman, and I was a scrawny, underfed student. I left him to read about the world while I danced on into it. Our minds are mostly occupied with the sort of stuff that fills newspapers. Wars in our relationships, politics in family and at work, personal scandals which upset us so, and the sport of our carnal pleasures. If we do not know how to put down that newspaper in our mind from time to time, if that is what we are obsessed with, if that is all we know, then we will never experience the unsullied joy and peace of nature at its finest. We will never know wisdom. Eating wisely. Some of my friends enjoy dining out. Some evenings they go to very expensive restaurants where they are prepared to spend a lot of money on exquisite food. However, they waste the experience by neglecting the taste of the food and concentrating on the conversation they are having with their partner. Who would talk during a concert given by a great orchestra? Chatter would hinder your enjoyment of the beautiful music and would probably get you thrown out. Even when watching a great movie, we hate being distracted. So why do people engage in chit-chat when they dine out? If the restaurant is mediocre, then it may be a good idea to start a conversation to take your mind off the insipid meal. But when the food is really delicious and very costly, telling your partner to be quiet so you can get your full money's worth is eating wisely. Even when we do eat in silence, we often fail to savour the moment. Instead, while we are chewing on one piece of food, our attention is distracted as we look at our plate